Every night, a cat slept on top of an old piano. No music played. No hands touched the keys. Yet, something was still waiting. This is a story about a love that listens, even when the music stops. In a quiet, sun-drenched apartment in Paris, there lived an elderly pianist and his sleek black cat, Noir. For decades, this room was a sanctuary of sound. The man's fingers would dance across the ivory keys, weaving melodies that told stories of his life of love found, of memories cherished, of moments that had long since faded into the soft Parisian twilight. His music was the heartbeat of the home, a constant, comforting presence. And through it all, Noir was his steadfast companion. The little cat would curl up at his feet, or sometimes, daringly, on the edge of the piano bench, his purrs, a quiet rhythm accompanying the beautiful chaos of notes. He was more than a pet. He was a silent audience, a furry confidant who understood the language of the heart spoken through music. The pianist's hands, though wrinkled and slowed by age, still held a certain magic. He'd play Chopin nocturnes. It seemed to make the very dust motes in the sunbeams waltz. He'd play Debussy, and you could almost smell the rain on the city streets outside. Noir would listen, his green eyes half closed, as if absorbing every note. Every emotion poured into the old instrument. The piano wasn't just furniture. It was a vessel of their shared history, its polished surface reflecting a lifetime of companionship. The man would often talk to Noir, narrating his day, sharing his thoughts, his voice a low hum against the backdrop of his own compositions. "Ah, Noir," he'd say with a smile, "if only these keys could talk, what tales they would tell." And Noir would simply blink slowly, a gesture of complete understanding. Then, one day, the music stopped. The pianist passed away, leaving behind a silence that was heavier and more profound than any note he had ever played. The apartment, once so full of life and melody, felt hollow, empty. The sun still streamed through the windows. The city still bustled outside, but inside, time seemed to stand still. The air grew thick with unspoken grief, a quiet sorrow that settled over everything like a fine layer of dust. But for Noir, the routine didn't entirely change. Every single night, as dusk settled over Paris, he would make his way to the silent piano. With a graceful leap, he'd land on its closed lid, right in the center, and curl into a tight black ball. He slept there, on the cold, unfeeling wood, in the exact spot where the pianist's hands had once brought such warmth and life. It was a strange, silent vigil. He wasn't waiting for food, or for a door to be opened. He was waiting for a feeling, a memory, a ghost of a sound. He would press his ear against the lid, as if trying to hear a faint, lingering echo of the music that had defined his entire world. The silence was deafening, but in his own feline way, Noir refused to let it win. He kept the memory alive, guarding the heart of the home, the silent piano. Weeks turned into a month, and the quiet apartment found a new occupant. A young woman, a musician herself, moved in, drawn by the charm of the old building and the promise of a new start in the city of art. She was gentle and observant, and she noticed the beautiful, sad-eyed black cat who seemed to rule over the living room. She learned his name Noir from a small tag on his collar. She saw his nightly ritual, his pilgrimage to the top of the grand piano, and her heart went out to him. She sensed the deep history in that room, the ghost of a melody hanging in the air. For a while, she left the piano untouched, respecting the silent shrine it had become. She'd sit on the floor, reading a book, occasionally glancing up at Noir, who watched her with an old, knowing gaze. She spoke to him in soft tones, telling him about her day, just as the old man had. She was trying to bridge the silence, to let him know he wasn't alone. Then, one evening, after a particularly long day, she felt a pull towards the instrument. She walked over, her footsteps soft on the wooden floor. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly, carefully, lifted the heavy lid, revealing the pristine black and white keys. She sat down on the bench, took a deep breath, and let her fingers rest on the cool ivory. She didn't play anything grand or complex. Instead, a simple, gentle tune emerged, a lullaby, soft and tentative, like a question being asked to the quiet room. It was a melody of hope, of new beginnings, but it also held a note of respect for what had come before. As the first few notes floated through the air, something incredible happened. Noir, who had been watching from his perch on a nearby armchair, lifted his head. His ears twitched. It was a sound he hadn't heard in so long, yet it was instantly familiar. It was music. It was life. With a fluid, silent leap, he jumped from the chair, not onto the lid this time, but onto the piano bench, right beside the young woman. He didn't make a sound. He simply sat there, pressing his warm, furry body against her side, and looked up at her hands. As they moved across the keys, his eyes, which had been clouded with a distant sadness, were now bright and clear. A low, rumbling started deep in his chest, a sound that hadn't been heard in the apartment for a very long time. It was a purr of contentment, of recognition, of coming home. For the first time since the old man's death, the apartment breathed again. The music, a different melody, but filled with the same love, filled the space, chasing away the shadows of grief and weaving a new story into the fabric of the room. The young woman smiled, tears welling in her eyes as she continued to play, her new companion purring steadfastly by her side. This story reminds us that some souls don't just mourn people. They mourn the love, the connection, the music that people bring into their lives. Noir wasn't just missing the man, he was missing the expression of his love, which was his music. And he waited, patiently, for that love to return in a new form. Love listens, even when the music stops. It waits in the silence, hoping to be awakened again. So, I want to ask you, what silence in your life is waiting to be filled with music again? What love are you holding on to, waiting for the right moment to let it be heard? Sometimes, all it takes is one person, one gentle touch, to bring the melody back to life. Thank you so much for watching and sharing this moment with me. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing for more tales that find the music in the quiet moments. See you next time.